It was a warm Saturday afternoon, the kind that made everyone want to be outside. The town of Clearwood was small, surrounded by quiet streets, little cafes, and a single shopping center that everyone visited on weekends. Families filled the supermarket that day, pushing carts full of snacks, juice boxes, and weekend groceries. Children laughed near the candy aisle while parents called out for them not to wander too far. Among the crowd was a woman named Linda, a young mother who came to the store with her 8-year-old daughter, Lily. They came every Saturday around the same time, usually after lunch. It had become a small routine that both of them enjoyed. Linda would let Lily pick one small treat, usually a chocolate bar or a sticker pack as a reward for finishing her schoolwork. That day started just like any other. The two walked through the automatic doors, the cool air of the supermarket brushing over them as the sound of shopping carts and quiet music filled the space. Lily skipped a few steps ahead, holding her little backpack. "Stay close, sweetheart," Linda reminded her with a smile. "I will, Mom," Lily answered cheerfully, stopping by the colorful display of cereal boxes shaped like cartoon animals. They went aisle by aisle, chatting about what to make for dinner. Everything felt so normal, so simple, that no one could have imagined how quickly that calm afternoon would turn into something the entire town would never forget. After about half an hour, Linda decided to check the frozen section, while Lily asked if she could look at the toys near the end of the same aisle. Linda agreed. It was only a few steps away, and she could still see her daughter if she leaned over the freezer door. A minute later, she turned to look again, expecting to see Lily standing near the row of small dolls and coloring books. But the space was empty. At first, she thought Lily had simply moved to the next aisle. She pushed her cart forward, peeking around the corner. Nothing. "Lily?" she called softly, her voice calm at first. No answer. Linda walked a bit faster, scanning each row. She passed the fruit section, then the bakery area, calling her daughter's name again and again. People around her started to notice the worry in her voice. A store employee approached and asked if everything was okay. Linda tried to keep her voice steady as she said, "I can't find my little girl. She was right here a minute ago." The worker immediately called for the manager, and within moments the store's speakers crackled with an announcement. "Attention all shoppers. We have a lost child. Please remain calm and stay where you are." Employees spread out in all directions. They checked the aisles, the restrooms, even the parking lot. The doors were locked temporarily while security reviewed the cameras. But nothing showed her leaving through the front or back entrances. It was as if she had vanished between one camera angle and the next. Outside, the summer sun continued to shine, unaware of the panic building inside the store. Linda's hands trembled as she stood near the customer service counter, answering questions from the police who had just arrived. Her voice cracked when she described Lily's pink dress, her little backpack with a cartoon bear, her favorite shoes. Hours passed, and the crowd slowly thinned as shoppers were escorted out one by one. The once lively supermarket now felt heavy and silent. Police officers set up barriers and kept the area closed while search teams combed through every inch. They searched behind shelves, storage rooms, even delivery trucks parked out back, but there was no sign of Lily. By evening, the town was buzzing with whispers. Neighbors turned on their TVs and phones trying to understand what had happened. A missing child alert was issued. Local volunteers joined the search, walking through nearby parks and wooded areas with flashlights. The following days felt unreal for everyone. Posters with Lily's photo appeared on lampposts, store windows, and community boards. Her smile, bright and innocent, became the face everyone in Clearwood knew. Reporters came from nearby cities, standing in front of the supermarket with microphones, saying words like mystery, disappearance, and heartbreak. People sent flowers and prayers. Some offered theories, others offered hope. Linda could hardly eat or sleep. Every sound reminded her of that day. The music in the supermarket, the squeak of shopping carts, the voice on the loudspeaker. She replayed every moment in her mind, wondering if there was something she missed, some small detail that could explain where her daughter had gone. Days turned into weeks. The police investigated everyone who had been in the store that day. They checked security footage again and again. There was one small blurry frame that showed a shadow moving near the storage hallway, just seconds before Lily disappeared. But it wasn't clear enough to tell who or what it was. There was no ransom note, no clear evidence, no trace. Just silence and unanswered questions. The town of Clearwood changed after that. Parents no longer let their kids wander even a few feet away in public. The supermarket added more cameras and security guards. But the emptiness lingered, an invisible reminder of the little girl who never came home. Linda stayed in the same house, hoping her daughter might somehow find her way back. Every night she left the porch light on. Friends tried to comfort her, but nothing truly helped. Life moved on for others, but for her, time froze on that single afternoon. Each anniversary brought reporters back, asking the same painful questions. She always answered politely, her voice soft but tired. "I just want her back," she'd say. That's all. 5 years passed. The posters had faded, the supermarket had been renovated, and new families moved into town, people who only vaguely knew about the missing girl case. But for those who had lived through it, the memory never left. Then one quiet night in autumn, something happened that pulled the story back into the light. A small gas station on the edge of town, open 24 hours, stood mostly empty that night. The clerk, a middle-aged man who worked the night shift, sat behind the counter watching the security monitors out of habit. Around midnight, he noticed movement on one of the screens. Someone was walking up to the station from the dark side road. He didn't think much of it at first. People sometimes came in late to grab snacks or fuel. But as the figure stepped closer to the light, he leaned forward. The person looked thin, barefoot, wearing a loose shirt that seemed far too big. Her hair was tangled, her steps slow and unsteady. She stopped just outside the door, looking around as if she didn't recognize where she was. The clerk stood up, unsure whether to go outside or call for help. When she finally turned her face toward the camera, he froze. The girl looked almost exactly like the child from those old missing posters. But this wasn't the same small, cheerful face. This was someone older, worn, and frightened, like she had lived through something no one could imagine. The footage was blurry, the timestamp glitching in the corner, but the resemblance was too strong to ignore. The clerk picked up the phone and called the police. Within minutes, patrol cars arrived, lights flashing across the empty highway. Officers reviewed the footage, rewound it, and played it again. There was no mistake. The girl in the video had the same birthmark near her left cheek, the same small scar on her arm that had been listed in the missing person report years ago. But by the time they searched the area, she was gone. That moment reopened everything. The investigation, the pain, the fear, all of it came flooding back. Reporters returned and people started talking again. The video spread online and the whole country wanted to know what really happened. For Linda, it was both hope and heartbreak. After years of silence, she might finally have an answer, but also a new fear. If her daughter had come back, why did she disappear again? The story that had once faded into the background of Clearwood was alive again, bringing with it the same haunting question that had never been answered. What happened to Lily that day in the supermarket? And what nor who had been waiting for her all this time? The morning after the gas station footage appeared online, the quiet town of Clearwood woke up to a flood of messages, calls, and news vans parked along the main road. It had been years since anyone had mentioned Lily's name on the news, but now it was everywhere again. The video clip was being replayed on every channel, the same blurry image of a thin young girl stepping into the light and looking straight toward the camera for just a few seconds before vanishing back into the darkness. For most people, it was just another mystery. But for one woman sitting alone in her small living room, it wasn't a mystery at all. It was hope. Linda watched the video on her phone, her hands shaking. She had watched it over and over through the night, hardly believing her eyes. The girl in the clip looked older, different in so many ways, but a mother could tell. There was something in her eyes, that same quiet expression, that same little frown when she was scared. Linda didn't need confirmation. She just whispered, "That's her." The police came to her home early that morning. They were kind but cautious. They couldn't confirm anything yet, not without real evidence, but they promised to investigate. Officers collected the footage, interviewed the gas station clerk, and searched the surrounding area again. The highway where the footage was taken was long and lonely, bordered by tall pine trees that seemed endless. It led to several small towns and beyond that open land. The officers searched every corner they could reach. Abandoned buildings, empty cabins, even old barns left behind by farmers. But once again, there was no sign of Lily. Still, something felt different this time. The story had life again. People cared. Online, strangers from across the country began posting messages, offering theories, and sending support. Some said the girl in the video might be someone else. Others said it was definitely Lily. A few even claimed they saw a similar girl walking near rest stops along the same highway weeks earlier. The police tried to trace every lead, but most ended with nothing. For Linda, it didn't matter. She finally felt like she had a reason to keep going. That evening, she decided to drive to the gas station herself. She wanted to stand in the same spot where the video was taken, to feel that moment. The clerk, a kind man in his 50s, remembered everything clearly. He showed her the exact spot where the girl had stood near the entrance under a flickering light. She didn't look dangerous or lost. He told her softly, just confused, like she didn't know where she was supposed to go. Linda thanked him and looked toward the stretch of road behind the station. It disappeared into the woods, a dark path with no clear direction. For a long moment, she stood there silently, as if hoping that by some miracle her daughter might appear again. As the sun set, she got back in her car, but didn't drive home right away. Instead, she followed the road that stretched behind the gas station. It was narrow and quiet, the kind of road few people ever used. The trees on both sides formed a tunnel that caught the last rays of sunlight. She drove slowly, her heart beating fast, her mind replaying every memory she had. Lily's laughter, her little drawings on the fridge, her bedtime stories, everything came flooding back. And then she saw something that made her slow down. On the side of the road, almost hidden by overgrown grass, there was an old, faded road sign. It pointed toward a place called Riverside Camp, a name Linda didn't recognize. The letters were peeling and the arrow pointed down an even smaller dirt path that led deeper into the woods. She hesitated for a moment. Then curiosity, or maybe instinct, just made her turn. The dirt road was uneven and filled with small stones, crunching under her tires. After a few minutes, she reached an open clearing with a few abandoned wooden cabins. The place looked forgotten, as if no one had been there for years. Broken signs, rusted benches, and an old campfire pit sat quietly in the center. She stepped out of the car, her shoes crunching on the dry leaves. The air was still, the only sound coming from the trees swaying gently in the wind. She didn't know what she was looking for. Maybe a clue, maybe just a feeling. But something about the place felt heavy, like it carried a story no one had told. Near one of the cabins, she noticed something odd. A small red ribbon tied around the handle of a door. It looked too new to have been there long. Her heart raced as she walked closer. She remembered how Lily used to wear red ribbons in her hair when she was little. It might have been a coincidence, but to a mother it didn't feel like one. She stood there for a while, staring at that ribbon, then turned back to her car. The police needed to see this. That night, officers returned with her and searched the area carefully. They took pictures, checked the cabins, and marked spots with evidence tags. Inside one of the cabins, they found a few old items, a blanket, a small mirror, and a half-burned candle. Nothing that clearly proved anything, but enough to suggest that someone had been there recently. For the first time in years, there was movement in the case. The police reopened the investigation fully, bringing in specialists, tracking possible sightings, and interviewing people who lived near that area. The story spread everywhere again. News anchors spoke about it with a mix of sadness and curiosity. The internet was full of theories, some believable, others far-fetched. But all of them circled around one question. Had Lily really come back? Days turned into weeks again. The excitement slowly began to fade as no new information came in. But Linda didn't give up. She kept visiting the gas station, leaving a small note on the window each week that simply said, "Come home. I'm waiting." Then something strange began to happen. One evening, when she arrived to leave her usual note, the clerk told her something odd. He had found another note on the door a few days earlier, one that looked like it had been written in a hurry, in uneven handwriting. It simply said, "I'm trying." The police took the note for analysis, but it was smudged and damaged by the weather. They couldn't confirm anything, but Linda believed it was from her daughter. In the following days, more reports started coming in from nearby towns. A girl matching Lily's description was seen walking along rural roads, sometimes asking for directions or food. but always disappearing before anyone could help her. Each story sounded slightly different, but they all described the same quiet, frightened girl with long brown hair and a small scar on her arm. The police followed each lead, and so did Linda, often driving for hours hoping she'd spot her daughter by chance. She kept a small bag in her car with food, water, and warm clothes, just in case she ever found her. One evening, while driving along another highway, she stopped at a rest area to ask a truck driver if he'd seen anyone matching the description. The man nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said, "a couple nights ago." She looked tired, sitting near the vending machines. Didn't talk much, but she thanked me when I gave her a sandwich. Then she walked off toward the woods before I could ask her anything else. Linda's heart ached. She showed him the old photo she carried everywhere. The man's eyes widened slightly, then he nodded again. "That's her." The police checked that area too, but once again the girl had vanished by the time they arrived. Still, the hope didn't fade. The idea that Lily might be alive kept everyone pushing forward, every officer, every volunteer, and especially her mother. Through all of this, the town changed again. People who had grown distant after years of silence now came together to help. Volunteers started new searches. The supermarket where she had vanished even placed a small garden outside with a bench and a plaque that read, "For Lily, always remembered." Linda visited it often, sometimes sitting there quietly for hours, imagining what her daughter's life might be like now. She wasn't sure if Lily remembered her, or if she was scared to come back. But in her heart, she believed that one day they would meet again. As winter came, snow began to cover the roads around Clearwood. The world felt quiet again, like it was waiting. But deep down, everyone knew the story wasn't over. Because somewhere out there, someone had seen her. And maybe, just maybe, she was trying to find her way home. The cold season came early that year. The streets of Clearwood were covered in thin layers of frost, and the trees stood bare, their branches stretching out against the pale gray sky. Most people hurried through their days, bundled in warm clothes, but for Linda, time still moved slowly. She spent most of her days driving to nearby towns, asking questions, showing the same photo that had been folded and unfolded so many times the edges had begun to tear. Every person she met had a different answer. Some had never heard of the case, others had seen something they couldn't quite explain. Each small piece of information gave her a tiny spark of hope that carried her through the next day. The police had not given up either, but their progress was slow. The footage from the gas station was now being analyzed by specialists who tried to enhance the blurry image. It wasn't easy. The lighting, the movement, and the years that had passed made it difficult to be sure of anything. But the small details still pointed toward the truth. The scar on the arm, the shape of her face, the nervous glance toward the shadows. People in town began to talk again, sharing stories over coffee or at the grocery store. Some believed Lily had been kept somewhere all those years. Others thought she might have run away and was too scared to return. But no one really knew, and the mystery only deepened. Linda had started keeping a notebook. Inside she wrote everything. Places she visited, people she met, small clues that might mean something later. It was her way of holding on to hope and control when everything else felt uncertain. One afternoon, while reviewing her notes, she got a call from the officer leading the case. He told her something unusual had come up. A farmer living 2 towns over had reported seeing a young woman walking along the edge of his property late at night. She matched the same general description: long brown hair, thin, wearing a loose gray sweater. When he called out to her, she looked startled and ran off into the woods. The police had already searched the area but found only faint footprints leading toward a stretch of old railway tracks that hadn't been used in years. The officer invited Linda to come by just in case it meant something. The drive was quiet. The road curved around hills and small lakes that shimmered in the pale winter light. When she reached the farm, the owner, a quiet man with kind eyes, met her at the gate. He led her toward the field where he had last seen the girl. "This is where she was," he said softly, pointing toward the edge of the trees. She looked lost. "Not dangerous, just lost." Linda stood there, her breath visible in the cold air. Something about the place made her heart ache. The silence, the endless line of trees, the thought of her daughter walking through them alone. She looked down and noticed a small piece of fabric caught on a low branch. It was light pink, torn, and weathered by the wind. The police took it for testing, but weeks passed with no results. By then, the town had grown used to waiting. Every lead seemed to come and go like a passing storm, bringing hope, then fading away. But Linda refused to let go. She spent more time at the gas station where the footage was captured, often bringing warm coffee for the clerk who had first reported it. Over time, the two became friends. They'd sit together in the quiet hours of the evening, watching cars pass by, talking about life and what it means to keep believing in something when everyone else stops. "You know," the clerk said one night, "I keep thinking about that video. The way she looked around before walking back into the dark. Maybe she wasn't scared of what was behind her. Maybe she was scared of what was ahead." That thought stayed with Linda. As the weeks passed, more pieces began to surface. Small things that didn't make sense on their own, but together formed a picture that couldn't be ignored. A driver had seen someone matching the description sitting alone at a bus stop outside town. Another had spotted her near an old rest area, looking through a trash bin for food. In each report, the girl never stayed long. She always left before anyone could get close. The police started to map out these sightings, realizing they formed a path, a loose circle that moved between Clearwood and several nearby towns. It was as if someone was drifting from place to place, staying just out of reach. For Linda, this was proof that her daughter was alive, and maybe trying to come home in her own way. One evening, she returned to the supermarket where it had all begun. It had changed over the years. New paint, new owners, a brighter layout. But for her, it still held the same weight. She walked slowly through each aisle, remembering every small detail of that day 5 years ago. The sounds, the smell of fresh bread, the faint music playing through the speakers. She stopped near the toy section, the place where she had last seen her daughter standing, holding a small stuffed animal. For a moment, she closed her eyes, and it almost felt like time folded back on itself. She could almost hear her voice, see her smile. As she stood there, a young woman who worked at the store approached her gently. "You're her mother, right?" she asked quietly. Linda nodded. The girl hesitated, then said, "I don't know if it means anything, but last week someone came in late at night when I was closing." She didn't say much, just asked where the toy section was. I thought it was strange because she didn't look like someone shopping for toys. She seemed nervous. Linda's heart raced. "Did you see her face?" The worker nodded slowly, not clearly. She wore a hood, but when she left, I noticed she had a small scar on her arm. The police reviewed the store's cameras again, but once more the footage was unclear. The figure was there for only a few seconds, just long, enough to pick up a small stuffed bear from the shelf before leaving. Linda held that image in her mind for days. If it really was her daughter, maybe that was her way of remembering, coming back to the place where everything changed, trying to take back something small from the past. The story began to spread. Again, and this time even strangers offered to help search. Volunteers started leaving small notes of encouragement at the gas station and along nearby rest stops. They read things like, "You're not alone," and "We're waiting for you." It became something bigger than one family's story. It became a message of hope for everyone who had ever lost someone. Winter slowly turned to spring, and one afternoon, Linda received another call. A hiker had found something near the woods behind the old riverside camp, a bracelet with the initials LM scratched on the inside. It was old and rusty, but Linda recognized it instantly. It was the same bracelet she had given her daughter for her birthday just months before she went missing. When she held it in her hand, tears filled her eyes. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she was searching in the dark anymore. There was a path, faint but real, leading her forward. That night she couldn't sleep. She sat by the window looking out at the stars, whispering softly, "If you can hear me, please just come home." Somewhere out there, she believed, her daughter might be looking at the same sky, trying to find her way back. In the days that followed, the police increased their search in the area near the old camp. They brought in tracking dogs, drones, and teams who walked the woods carefully. Each day ended without answers, but there was a feeling that something was close, closer than ever before. And then, just as everyone began to wonder if they would ever find her, a new video surfaced. A delivery driver, passing through a small roadside motel town miles from Clearwood, had captured footage on his dashcam. It showed a girl walking along the shoulder of the road, carrying a small backpack. Her head was down, her steps slow. It was dark, but when the camera light hit her face for just a moment, the resemblance was unmistakable. The driver stopped, but by the time he turned around, she was gone. The police confirmed the footage was taken only 3 nights earlier. It was the clearest sign yet. The girl was alive, and she was moving. Linda watched the video quietly, her hand covering her mouth, her heart beating faster than it had in years. She didn't know where her daughter was going or what she had been through, but one thing was certain now. The search wasn't over. It was only beginning again, and this time, she wouldn't stop until she found her. The days after the new footage appeared were filled with nervous excitement. Everyone in Clearwood could feel it. The story that had once been a quiet tragedy was now alive again. People spoke softly about it in cafes and grocery lines, wondering where the girl might be, if she was safe, if she even knew she was being searched for. For Linda, the video was both a comfort and a heartache. She had watched it so many times that the faint glow of the headlights was burned into her mind. The image of her daughter walking alone on that dark road haunted her, not because she looked afraid, but because she looked determined, like she was searching for something. The police had traced the location to a small town called Miller's Point, a few hours away from Clearwood. It was a quiet place surrounded by woods and long stretches of empty land. The dashcam footage had been taken near a roadside motel just outside the town. That was where they decided to start. Linda joined the search team the next morning. The sun rose pale and cold, the mist still hanging low over the trees. The road looked almost the same as in the video. Cracked pavement, tall grass on both sides, and a single row of streetlights that flickered weakly in the wind. They checked every motel, gas station, and diner in the area, showing the same photo again and again. Some people thought they had seen her, others weren't sure. The motel owner remembered a quiet girl who had come in a few days earlier, asking if she could rent a room for one night. She didn't have much money, so he had let her stay in a small cabin behind the building, a place usually reserved for workers. When the police checked the cabin, it was empty. The bed was neatly made, and a half-empty bottle of water sat on the table beside a small folded piece of paper. The note had only 2 words written on it. Almost home. Linda held the note carefully, her heart pounding. She recognized the handwriting instantly. Round, careful letters, the way her daughter used to write when she was learning to spell. Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled through them. It was her. It really was her. The officers believed the girl might still be nearby, maybe even watching from a distance. They searched the woods behind the motel, calling out softly, but the forest stayed silent. That night, Linda couldn't sleep. She sat outside the motel on the wooden steps, staring at the dark line of trees. She spoke softly, as if her daughter could somehow hear her through the stillness. "You don't have to be scared," she whispered. "You can come home now." The next few days passed slowly. The search continued, but no one saw her again. Still, small clues kept appearing. A footprint near the edge of the river, a fabric caught on a branch, the faint remains of a small campfire deep in the woods. It was as if she was always one step ahead, close enough to be seen but never close enough to reach. Linda stayed in Miller's Point, refusing to leave. Each morning she walked the same roads, carrying food and water in case she came across her daughter. She talked to locals, truck drivers, hikers, anyone who might have noticed something strange. One evening, while walking along the riverbank, she noticed something glimmering between the rocks. She knelt down and picked it up, a small locket, dull and scratched, but when she opened it, she saw the tiny photograph inside. It was of her and her daughter, taken years ago at a fair. The picture was worn from time, but it was unmistakable. She cried quietly, clutching the locket to her chest. Someone had been here, and not long ago. When she brought it to the police, They confirmed it had likely been dropped within the past few days. It was more proof that her daughter was alive, moving, surviving. The officers decided to set up cameras along the roads near the woods, hoping to capture more footage. For the first few nights, nothing happened. Then, on the fourth night, something appeared. Just after midnight, one of the cameras recorded movement near the trees. A figure stepped into the clearing, thin, wearing a hood, carrying a small backpack. The girl moved slowly, as if she was unsure whether she should keep walking or turn back. Then she looked directly toward the camera and froze. For several seconds she stood there, breathing heavily, her face partly hidden by the shadows. But when the light caught her just right, there was no doubt. It was her. She looked older now, maybe 14 or 15, but the same gentle eyes were there. The same small scar. She didn't run this time. She simply stood there for a moment, then raised her hand slightly like she wanted to wave but couldn't quite do it. Then she turned and walked away. When Linda saw the footage, she broke down, not from sadness this time, but from a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Relief. Her daughter was alive. She wasn't a memory or a ghost or a mystery anymore. She was real. The next morning, a team went back to that same spot. They found footprints leading deeper into the forest and what looked like the remains of a small shelter made from branches and a tarp. Inside were a few empty bottles, a blanket, and a single drawing on a torn piece of paper. The drawing showed two people, a tall figure and a small child, holding hands under a bright yellow sun. It was simple, almost like something a child would make, but in the corner, written in small, careful letters, were the words, "I'm still here." Linda held that drawing for a long time, unable to speak. Every line, every mark felt like a message sent across time. She knew her daughter was out there, watching, trying to reach her. After that day, Linda stayed near the woods, spending her evenings by the river, where the locket was found. She left food, blankets, and small notes in a tin box, each one signed "Love, Mom." And then one morning, the tin box was gone. In its place was a new note, folded neatly and weighed down by a small stone. It read, "I see the light sometimes. I want to come home, but I'm not ready yet," Linda cried as she read it. The handwriting was shakier than before, but still hers. It was the clearest message she had received. Her daughter was alive, afraid, but trying to find her way back. The police advised her to be patient. They believed pushing too hard might scare the girl away, so they decided to wait to give her time. Weeks passed. The air grew warmer as spring returned, and with it came a sense of quiet hope that spread through the town. People stopped Linda in the street just to tell her they were praying for her, that they believed she'd find her daughter soon. Every night, Linda sat by her window, the same way she had for years, watching the stars. But now, instead of feeling empty, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Peace. She knew her daughter was alive. She knew she was trying. And that was enough for now. But deep down, she also knew the story wasn't over, because the same gas station that had started it all, the one where the first footage was captured, would soon record something. Again, it happened just as the sun was setting one evening. The clerk, the same man who had helped Linda months before, was finishing his shift when the doorbell rang. He looked up and froze. A young girl stood in the doorway. Her clothes were worn, her hair tangled, but her eyes, when they were unmistakable. She didn't speak. She simply stood there, trembling, clutching a small stuffed bear in her hands. The clerk didn't move. He slowly reached for the phone to call the police. But when he looked back up, she had stepped outside again, glancing back only once before walking toward the woods. When the officers reviewed the footage, it was clear and sharp. There was no mistaking it. It was her. This time she had come closer than ever before, close enough to touch the door to step into the light. The news spread fast. People from all over the state followed the story, holding on to every update, every clue. And through it all, Linda waited, not with fear this time, but with quiet faith. She knew it was only a matter of time before her daughter found her way back completely. She had already taken the hardest step, stepping into the light. And somewhere in those quiet woods beyond the edge of town, a girl was walking, slowly but surely, toward home. The night after the last gas station footage was recorded, the whole town felt different. Clearwood had never been so awake. People left their lights on, watching the news, refreshing their phones every few minutes. They all wanted the same thing, to hear that the girl had been found. For Linda, sleep didn't come. She sat on her porch wrapped in a blanket, staring at the old oak tree in her yard. The soft hum of the streetlights filled the quiet night, and the air smelled faintly of rain. She couldn't stop replaying that image in her mind. Her daughter standing at the door of the gas station, holding a stuffed bear, eyes wide and uncertain. She had looked so close, yet still so far away. The police had promised to increase patrols near the area where the footage was taken. They were careful, moving slowly, trying not to frighten the girl. This time, everyone agreed that she had to come forward on her own. By the next morning, the news vans had gathered again near the edge of town. Reporters stood outside the gas station repeating the same words over and over. After 5 long years, New Hope has returned to Clearwood. The world was watching, but for Linda, none of that mattered. All she cared about was her daughter. She drove to the gas station early that morning, just as the first rays of sunlight touched the sky. The clerk greeted her with a quiet nod. He had barely slept either. Together they watched the door, the same door her daughter had stood in front of less than 24 hours ago. She looked so unsure, the clerk said softly, like she wanted to walk in but didn't know if she should. Linda's eyes filled with tears. "She's scared," she whispered. "But she's close. I can feel it." The police arrived soon after. They placed gentle notices around the area, asking the girl if she was watching or to come to a safe point nearby. They also set up a small table with warm food, water, and a blanket, leaving it by the side of the building. For the rest of that day, nothing happened. People came and went, talking in low voices, cameras rolling. But as the sun began to set again, something changed. A local driver called the police station, saying he had seen someone walking near the field behind the station, a thin figure moving slowly, almost as if afraid to be seen. Officers hurried to the spot, moving quietly, their flashlights sweeping across the ground. But when they reached the clearing, the girl was gone. All they found was the small stuffed bear she had been holding. It lay in the grass, its fur dirty and worn, but on its paw there was something written in marker. It said, "Home." When Linda held that bear later that night, her hands trembled. It was the same one her daughter had begged for years ago in that supermarket aisle. She had been carrying it all this time. Somehow that small detail, that she had kept it, made everything feel real again. The next morning the weather turned gray and windy. Rain clouds rolled in from the west and the roads glistened with moisture. The police decided to search one more area, the woods that stretched behind the highway, a place few people ever went. Linda insisted on going with them. They warned her it might be difficult, but she didn't care. She had waited too long to stop now. The group walked carefully through the trees, their boots crunching over wet leaves. The air smelled of pine and earth. Every few steps, Linda would pause, listening for any sound. A voice, a branch breaking, anything that might tell her where to go. Then, after nearly 2 hours, one of the officers called out softly, "Over here." In a small clearing near a stream, they found what looked like another temporary shelter. A few blankets laid out neatly, an empty tin of soup, and beside it, a small notebook. Linda knelt down and picked it up. The cover was bent and smudged, but when she opened it, she froze. Inside were small, careful drawings, and of trees, rivers, and sometimes people. Some pages had short notes. "Too loud today. Nice weather. Almost ready." And on the last page, "I want to go home." Her tears fell onto the page as she read those words. The officer beside her placed a hand on her shoulder. "She's close," he said quietly. They stayed in the woods until sunset, but there was no sign of her. The team decided to return the next morning. Linda didn't argue. She understood that her daughter needed to feel safe before stepping forward. That night, she stayed in her car near the gas station, watching the road. The rain came down gently, tapping against the windshield. Every car that passed made her heart jump. She wanted to believe that one of them would stop and her daughter would step out. Hours went by. Midnight came and went. Then, just after 2 in the morning, she saw something. A small figure walking along the edge of the road, illuminated by the glow of a passing truck. Linda's breath caught in her throat. She opened the car door and stepped out slowly, afraid that any sudden movement might scare the girl away. The figure stopped near the edge of the parking lot. Looking around nervously, Linda's voice trembled as she called out softly. "It's okay. You're safe." The girl didn't move. The wind lifted her hair slightly, revealing part of her face. Pale, tired, and older than Linda remembered, but still the same. "It's me," Linda whispered. "It's Mom." For a moment, neither of them moved. The sound of rain filled the space between them. Then slowly the girl took one small step forward, then another. When she reached the edge of the light, her eyes met her mother's. They both froze, not because of fear, but because of everything that moment carried. The years, the waiting, the hope that had never died. Linda wanted to run forward, to hold her, to never let go again. But she stayed still, letting her daughter take the next step. The girl's voice came out soft and shaky. "I didn't know if you'd still be here." Linda smiled through her tears. "I never left." The girl hesitated, then walked forward until she was close enough to be held. And in that quiet, rain-soaked parking lot, mother and daughter finally embraced. Neither of them spoke for a long time. They didn't need to. Everything they'd ever wanted to say was in that single moment. The apologies, the promises, the love that had survived everything. When the police arrived minutes later, they stood at a distance, letting the two have their moment. The cameras were turned off. No one said a word. Later that night, the officers took them to the station to rest and get warm. The girl barely spoke at first, answering only short questions. She looked exhausted but calm. The doctor who examined her said she was healthy but needed time to recover. As the sun rose, light filled the small room where she was resting. Linda sat beside her, holding her hand. When the girl finally opened her eyes, she looked at her mother and whispered, "I missed you." Linda smiled, brushing her hair gently. "I missed you every day." The next few weeks were quiet. The world moved on to other stories, but for the people of Clearwood, this one would never fade. The supermarket where she had disappeared years ago placed a small plaque near the entrance, not to remind people of what was lost, but of what was found. It read, "Hope is never gone." Life slowly began to settle again. There were long conversations, slow healing, and moments of silence where words weren't enough. But through it all, they were together. That was what mattered. Sometimes in the evenings, they would walk together through the park near their home. The girl didn't talk much about where she had been, and Linda didn't press her. Some things she knew took time. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset, the girl said softly, "When I was gone, I used to look at the sky and think about you. I always thought the stars looked brighter when I imagined you seeing them too." Linda smiled. "I was looking at them too," she said. "Every night." The girl leaned her head on her mother's shoulder, and for the first time in years, she felt safe. Clearwood moved on, but people still told the story, not as a mystery anymore, but as a reminder of what love and faith can endure. And sometimes late at night, when the roads were quiet and the gas station lights glowed softly in the distance, the clerk who had seen it all would look toward the woods and smile, knowing that somewhere out there, a lost child had finally found her way home.